Good morning, I'm Brian Reagan, and this is
Tyler Kelly.
And welcome you to Mornings with Brian and Tyler. Today we are in Esther chapter 6. It's a short chapter, so we're just going to read the whole thing.
That night the king could not sleep, so one was commanded to bring the book of the records of the Chronicles, and they were read before the king. And it was found written that Mordecai had told of Bigthana and Teresh, two of the king's eunuchs, the doorkeepers who had sought to lay hands on King Ahasuerus. Then the king said, "What honor or dignity has been bestowed on Mordecai for this?" The king's servants who attended him said, "Nothing has been done for him." So the king said, "Who is in the court?" Now Haman had just entered the outer court of the king's palace to suggest that the king hang Mordecai on the gallows that he had prepared for him. The king's servant said to him, "Haman is there standing in the court." And the king said, "Let him come in." So Haman came in, and the king asked him, "What shall be done for the man whom the king delights to honor?" Now Haman thought in his heart, "Whom would the king delight to honor more than me?" And Haman answered the king, "For the man whom the king delights to honor, let a royal robe be brought which the king has worn, and a horse on which the king has ridden, which has a royal crest placed on its head. And let this robe and horse be delivered to the hand of one of the king's most noble of princes, that he may array the man whom the king delights to honor. Then parade him on horseback through the city square, and proclaim before him, 'Thus shall it be done to the man whom the king delights to honor.'" And the king said to Haman, "Hurry, take the robe and the horse, as you have suggested, and do so for Mordecai the Jew, who sits within the king's gate. Leave nothing undone of all that you have spoken." So Haman took the robe and the horse, arrayed Mordecai, and led him on horseback through the city square, and proclaimed before him, "Thus shall it be done to the man whom the king delights to honor." Afterward, Mordecai went back to the king's gate, but Haman hurried to his house mourning with his head covered. When Haman told his wife Zeresh and all his friends everything that had happened to him, his wise men and his wife Zeresh said to him, "If Mordecai, before whom you have begun to fall, is of Jewish descent, you will not prevail against him, but will surely fall before him." While they were still talking with him, the king's eunuchs came and hastened to bring Haman to the banquet which Esther had prepared.
All right. Basic principle of success here on the Mordecai side. And we'll come back to this one tonight on the Haman side. But on the Mordecai side, he saw a great evil about to occur. He was able to prevent it, and he went on with his life. He did what he did because that's who he was. It is nice when you get the actual honor from people for the work you do. But the simple fact is, most people, most of the time, don't care about you or anything about you. We like to pretend they do, but they don't. Tyler, from a book that you and I have read most of, what is the number one thing that most people think about and care about most of the time?
Themselves.
And the king's life was spared. He's like, all right, sweet. This assassination attempt foiled. I'll go on being kingly. Mordecai didn't do it so that he could advance his position. He's like, yeah, no. Assassinations in the kingdom are a bad thing. And for people, anytime you start a process where you start killing the heads of state, you open a can of worms that is very hard to ever shut again. And I would say look at England. Look at the number of people that were usurpers to the throne that literally till Parliament basically said to the king or the queen, whichever region it was, here's the extent of the limit of your power. Beyond that, we control everything else. At which point, a lot of people were like, oh, well, it's not really worth killing everybody ahead of me in line now to become the king or the queen. When nations start assassinating the heads of other nations because they don't like them, Yeah, dangerous business, that killing heads of state thing. So Mordecai, and I have to figure Mordecai just saw the wisdom of it, and the king had not been bad to him. And what would be another valid reason why, you got Esther in there. You're connected to the king's household indirectly, but you don't use it to your advantage. When you want to understand what a humble guy looks like, it really is Mordecai. He does what he does because that's who he is, and he really doesn't care if he gets great glory or praise on it. And because he didn't get glory back when, the Lord's able to use that at this time to bring Mordecai glory and flip the tables. So, do what you do that you know is right. Leave it alone if you don't get the praise for doing the good that you did. Because if you're doing it for the praise of men, you'll have your reward. If you're doing it just because that's who you are, because that's who you want to continue to be, you receive praise from God in ways that you don't recognize it, and when you probably won't even be thinking about it. And so other thoughts on this, my brother?
No, sir.
All right, with that, I'm Brian Reagan. This is
Father Kelly.
We bid you good morning.